We'll start with a book cover. I'm an author, bigger category. Within that category, I'm a graphic novelist. Right? So I tell stories with words and pictures. Anybody ever read a graphic novel out there? You guys heard of those things? Okay, who reads a lot of graphic novels? Who reads like comics in general, web comics or whatever, wherever you can find them? Okay, so what I want to talk about today is what I like to call the iceberg below the surface. So any creative endeavor has the thing that we can share with an audience, right? Whether it's a song, a graphic novel, a movie, a YouTube series, whatever the thing is. There's a part the audience gets to see. But what do we know about an iceberg? If you're on a cruise through the Arctic and you see an iceberg sticking up out of the water, are you seeing the whole iceberg?
No.
Like math-wise, what percentage of an iceberg are you looking at, do you think?
Like 20.
Yeah, 15, 20, like at best, right? Maybe even 10%. How does that equate to books? What am I talking about here? Well, a book itself is, for you, the whole story. It's the whole iceberg. But for me, the creator and the team of people that work with me on the book, editors, copywriters, designers, publishers, all that stuff, that's the iceberg below the surface. The journey it took to get the iceberg viewable to you. And I don't know, when I was your age, I thought it was really interesting to hear those stories because the journey of a creative project to get something done, it's kind of magical, especially something like a movie where you need maybe 100 people to work on it to get that 2-hour movie to work. And it's magic when it does work. A bad movie is a bad movie, but a great movie is kind of like this magic trick. And I think books are that way as well. So I want to share some of that iceberg below the surface with you. So hopefully, if and when you read Shark Summer, you'll get a deeper sense of like why I made it and the journey it took to make it. So you'll appreciate more about the story and the process of making it. But also just like any graphic novel, if you pick it up, you're like, wow, I never really thought about that aspect of storytelling before. So let's deconstruct an aspect of the book. Do you recognize this as a page of a comic? Just like in general? All right, now comics, like any art form, have specific elements to them that are unique to it. And I'm going to turn off some parts of this page and reveal what I think is the essential part of comic art, also known as sequential art. And it's these things. I know that we're looking at basically 12 TVs to make one big screen. But what are we looking at here on the page if I turn off like the line art and the color? What's left of a comic? I like hands. There's a hand right there. Yeah. No, you. Yeah. What are we looking at here? Do you know the term for those things?
It's the left. I don't know how to say that.
Okay, that's fine. I know. I'm looking for the word. Some of you might know what it is, but you might not have ever heard it before. Yeah, go ahead. Black sweatshirt, green lettering. Yeah. Very close, but a very clear distinction. A box is something you put something in. What I'm looking at is like the idea of a window, a point of view of something. In the very back. Who's got a different word that's not boxes in the t-shirt there? Yeah.
Comic strip.
Ooh, close. A comic strip is what it becomes. Okay, I'll give you the word because we could play this game all day. It's panel. You ever heard that term, panel, for the thing that holds the information of the story? Why do I bring that up? Because it's invisible when you're reading the book. When you read a book, you get immersed in the story. You think of the emotional journey of the characters. But for the cartoonist, the panel is our essential tool. It's how we choose the moments to share with you, the audience. If I'm talking about Shark Summer, summer is a very long amount of time in general. It's months, right? It's many, many minutes, many, many seconds. But a comic only has so many moments it can share. So the artist has to choose what are the valuable moments of this story or Shark Summer as you're trying to tell, right? So let's break this down. And I'm going to share with you aspects of Shark Summer through this kind of like insight into the elements of the panel for the cartoonist. So we've got the frame and we've got setting. So in this example panel, what is the setting of this story? Yeah, in yellow.
A frog on a lily pad in a pond.
Yeah, the setting is the pond. And the character is the frog. All right, now the speech bubble serves a certain purpose. What does the speech bubble do in comic art? Yeah.
Shows whether they're thinking it or they're saying
Mhm. Yeah, it contains like interiority, right? Like what a character is saying or what they're thinking. So let's do the set. Let's do the word. Say it as the character would say it. Give me some more. All right, a pond full of frogs, right? So here's the lesson. With creative works, me, the artist, I present you with certain information and you interpret it. You all made a different ribbon, right? That's what reading is. It's finding the information and then filtering it through your own brain, and out comes a new thing, right? That's why we could love a book and not love the same book, right? So these are the things the cartoonist works with to tell their stories. Cartooning is a narrative art. It's about storytelling. So being in control of these elements and knowing what they will do for a reader, that's the job, really. So let's start by talking about character. It's the easiest one to latch onto because it is the point of view of a story. But let's look at a piece of history here for a second to help you understand how I think of character design and what it does. This movie is called... Oops, sorry, I skipped ahead. Let's get it going again. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Does anybody know why this is an important Disney movie other than that it's just really old, so it seems important? You know?
It was one of the first animated movies.
Yeah, in fact, in America, it's the first full-length feature animated cartoon movie. Before this, imagine this world, cartoon movies just didn't exist. The only thing cartoons were to American audiences were very short gag, jokey comics that were very theatrical. They would be like Mickey Mouse running across a cartoon stage, dancing to a song, doing some silly things, and here comes Minnie, now they're dancing together. It's about jokes, and we love jokes. But Walt Disney and his animators, who were all artists who went to art school and had masters in arts, like they had a deep, rich understanding of art, they had chose this as their art form, and they had more they wanted to say with that art form. They weren't just happy making jokes. So they were like, you know what? You know what we can do? We can make a movie like those live action actors do. We can tell dramatic stories that are happy, sad, romantic, violent, funny, scary, suspenseful, all the things dramatic storytelling can do. But how do we figure that out? How do we teach people about a drawing that has emotional depth and is not just for being funny? Well, we pick a story like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and we think about what the characters represent. So what are some of the names of the dwarfs? It's whatever ones come to mind. Sleepy's one. Give me another one. Remember some of the names? What's that?
Dopey.
Yeah, Dopey's another one in the back there. Yeah, go ahead. Andrew? Andrew nodded. I mean, maybe somewhere in the lineage of these dwarves, that is one. But yeah, you guys see the pattern? They're all things. Yeah, give me one more.
Happy.
Happy, exactly. So these are emotional states or conditions humans can be in. So it's a perfect story to experiment with what can we do with the character that's not just like being funny, but what does bashful look like when we want to draw it? What does it look like when a character is curious about something, but they already have a condition unto themselves? These are complicated ideas. And the animators figured out how to represent this through basically aspects of the face. The way the eyebrows, eyes, and mouth move tells us a lot about how a character is feeling. And I think that is the essential job of the cartoonist, is to tell an emotional story. Now, Shark Summer has many themes. You might pick it up because you like, simply, I like sharks, and I like summer. Let me read this book. Okay, so that's the hook. Maybe you know that it's like kind of inspired by Jaws. Maybe you like that movie. Okay, there's another hook. But why do you learn to care about a story? It's through the emotions of the characters. It almost doesn't matter as much what they're doing, but it's like why they're doing it. So the cover of Shark Summer is about all of these ideas I'm talking about. So our main character, Gail, our main protagonist, our point of view for the story of Shark Summer. If I'm going to introduce you to her through the cover, her face needs to do something very specific, something that is specific to a protagonist of the story. What is Gail's face telling you? Again, Gail is that middle character who's drawn really big. What is her face saying to you?
She looks like she's scared.
Or she's a little scared. Yeah, good term. Give me some more words. Ooh, a little surprised. Another word.
In awe of something.
Ooh, in awe. I like that. Yeah, in the blue. Yeah. Yeah, we could do this all day. Give me one more word.
Shocked.
You see how an emotion is not just one word? It's like ice cream, you got all these flavors, but emotions are like all the ice creams together at once sometimes. So Gail's face needs to be like, not terrified, where she's running away, but like engaged and curious and seeing something she's never seen that makes you want to also see it. Do you know what Gail's looking at? No, I mean, you see the shark behind her, so you get a sense of where we're going with this story. But Gail's face is trying to catch you into a feeling that you've either felt before, you want to feel again, or a feeling you've never felt. And that's how good storytelling works. It draws you into the emotional hook. And it also tells you what role characters play in the story. So Gail is, you could say, our hero. This isn't really like that type of story where we have a hero, which also means we don't have a villain. But we do have an antagonist. Can you tell just by faces which our characters are antagonists? Yeah, what do you think?
The one on the right, like back right.
Yeah, in the back smaller? Okay, what about, that character's name is Lex. What about Lex's face is telling you antagonist?
Because he's looking away and he's kind of squinting.
Yeah, Lex is like turned away, their face is very narrow, it's even pointy. Like the shape of the face even feels a little more aggressive. You want to add to that?
He looks jealous.
Yeah, there's like an energy that's, it's not about curiosity and wonder, it's something a little deeper and more complicated that maybe has to do with the backstory and relationships with these characters. Do we get answers? No, but we get emotional states. And that's enough to make you want to open the book and read, hopefully. And if we were to flip through any graphic novel, and if I flip through some pages of Shark Summer, we can see the emotional story of the characters, not by even knowing what they're looking at, but just how they're looking at it. We can tell Elijah and Maddie are seeing something that is worth putting on that camera. Here's a very kind of quiet moment from around the middle of the book that makes Elijah alive. It really doesn't have anything to do with the plot of the story, but it's a moment where you see how his brain responds to things, and that makes him feel real. So like Walt Disney and his animators back in the day, when they were working on their films, like, I don't know, Bambi, or how about Pinocchio? You guys know what Pinocchio is? Like that is the illusion of life, a puppet coming to life. It's a story about characters feeling alive. Walt Disney would say, like, when they're designing these characters and the stories, are we creating an illusion of life? A drawing that feels like it is responding to an imaginary world. And so that's what I'm thinking of here when I'm drawing Elijah. Like, look at what he's doing from panel to panel. All right, so even without knowing the story, we can see Elijah's responding to somebody, and he's a little annoyed because they misinterpreted what he said. Okay, now he's quiet. Look, I didn't even draw them out. So he's having a quiet beat, and then all of a sudden, a light shines on him. And what does his face do? It squints, right? Like he's closing his eyes. They've got a bright light shining on him. And now what does Elijah do in panel 4? Yeah, in the back there. What's he doing?
He opens his eyes half-closed so he can see.
Yeah, and he looks at his own hand because he's holding a flashlight, which, as we know, is like, obviously, Elijah, you are not shining a light in your own eye. You would understand that. So it's a little gag. Just adds like a humorous moment, and then we get that classic cartoon moment of realization where a character's eyes blow up, like they swell up with like focus onto something. And we see Elijah discovers who is looking at him. Do we know? No. But we could guess it's like maybe a figure of authority in some way or other, because Elijah's sneaking around. And then this last face is very specific to this moment. Whenever you draw a character in an encounter, you're kind of learning about something new, even if you invented them. Like I learned something new about how Elijah reacts to the world in that moment. So the expression I'm going for is, and we can relate, you're a kid and you're doing something wrong and you very much know you're doing something wrong and you've been caught by an adult. Have you been there in life? Yeah, in varying degrees, right? Maybe it wasn't totally illegal like what Elijah is doing. He's sneaking onto a film set and a police officer has caught him. But in like small ways, right? It's like, oh, you snuck a cookie before dinner or whatever. That face is that emotion. It's like, I know I'm not supposed to do this. It took me a while to draw that. It's a small moment, but for me it was very important to helping you understand how Elijah's brain works. So later when we get to plot and we get to big ideas, Elijah is very much alive for you. And the same thing is true of any characters. These characters and their faces tell you how to interact with the story in small ways. If I'm going to show you a big creepy shadow of a shark, seeing how Gail reacts to that is just as important as to how you see it, right? So we kind of live through the expression of the characters. All right, so that's character as an element. Characters do many more things, but for me, that's the fundamental part that really makes a reader want to follow the story. But I want to talk a little bit about the setting of Shark Summer. Who has looked at the book Shark Summer at this point? Anybody? This is a group that doesn't know this book. Okay, a couple people. All right, The Island of Martha's Vineyard. Have you ever heard of it? Okay, so in the state of Massachusetts, have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Massachusetts over in New England on the East Coast on the Atlantic Ocean. Off the coast of Massachusetts is a very small island that was begun as like a fishing community called Martha's Vineyard. And there's a movie called Jaws that my book is referencing. Have you heard Jaws? All right, even who's actually watched Jaws? A couple of people? All right, but I bet all of us like at least know what Jaws is as a thing, like you've maybe seen the movie poster or something like that. My book is set, the summer Jaws is being made on the island of Martha's Vineyard. So Jaws is a Hollywood movie, but back in the 70s when it was being made, you didn't have CGI and computers where you could create environments in like a digital landscape. You had to actually travel to a place and put the camera down and film it there, and you had to film the people that were there. So when you watch Jaws, you're actually seeing kind of a document of Martha's Vineyard at that time and place. And because my story was set in that time and place, I had a responsibility to follow some of the history and understand what it might have been like to be there. Who likes nonfiction in any form? I think we kind of all could say yes. It just depends if you found a story that you actually care about. Sometimes an assignment is an assignment, but if you are interested in history and you find a story that's relatable from the past, that's like a very appealing thing. And the story of the making of Jaws is a very appealing story to me. So I started digging into the history of Martha's Vineyard because I had to understand it for my setting. And through it, I actually discovered a lot more about what my characters could do in the plot of my book. Things I couldn't have ever imagined would have even been that interesting because they were grounded in something that was very real. So as someone who considers themselves like a person who writes fiction, who likes fantasy and science fiction and all these tropes of genre, working with nonfiction was a big lesson for me and actually what I'm interested in and why I need something a little unexpected in my work. So like, for example, my character Maddie in Shark Summer, she's the one that initiates the deeper, darker, creepier parts of the plot because she has this complicated, mysterious backstory of the island of Martha's Vineyard, a little bit of local lore about a Dead Sea captain and like his weird cult he was running and all this stuff that you would know when you read and if you read the book. And I was like, I don't want Maddie's home life to feel like a normal home life. I don't want her to have a bedroom that's like any of our bedrooms, where it's like a square space with a door and maybe a closet and a dresser and a poster of something and a bed and maybe a bookshelf and a desk for a laptop. That's not who Maddie really is, and it's not why she's so weird. And I was thinking about Martha's Vineyard, and there's all these lighthouses that don't really serve a function anymore, but they're beautiful historical artifacts. And I was like, what if Maddie lives in one of those lighthouses? So her parents stay in the main house, and she lives in the decommissioned lighthouse. And I have this fun moment when Gail discovers that Maddie lives in a lighthouse. And imagine having a friend that lived in a lighthouse. That'd be like so cool. You have like all these floors where they're full of like weird, creepy, haunted artifacts from the past, but they're also like your things. And then on the top floor, you've got this big full window view looking out over the infinite ocean. That's pretty interesting. And that's the type of environment that's going to make a character that feels out of the normal of everyday life. Plus, I got to draw a fun map, and I just love drawing a good map. So through the history of Martha's Vineyard and the setting of this story, I was able to discover things that felt a little more real. And for a reader, they could literally go to Martha's Vineyard and have their own Shark Summer, which is something my editor pointed out to me. They're like, as you're working on this book, think about the way you're using history and how like a young reader could someday watch Jaws and have a different understanding of your book, or travel to the corner of Main Street and Water Street and go in that hardware store, and also think about how they read a fictional book about two kids riding a motor scooter by it. That is a very appealing and interesting idea that adds a level of immersion to my book that I didn't know I wanted until I started working on it. So setting can do all kinds of things for your storytelling, whether it's fictional or based in fact. It's going to initiate things in your characters you did not expect. So while you create a character, you don't really create their responses. You think about the logic of their response and why they might do things and what their emotional state is, what they need and want. And setting evokes that. Like something like the cliffs of Martha's Vineyard, they're so beautiful, like in the sunset, like the minerals and the rocks like shine this bright red. I could have, I got a creative mind, but I couldn't have come up with something that interesting. I needed these photo references to get me there. And there's a million other, like sometimes political, sometimes cultural references to things. Martha's Vineyard had its own sign language. I have a character that represents that. There's all these things that you don't need them to enjoy the book, but they add a believability to the story. And one more fun one that is about like the weird mystery of the story. So the way the story plays out is kind of like Scooby-Doo. You guys know what Scooby-Doo is?
Yeah.
Like classic Scooby-Doo isn't supernatural. It's always like a bad guy in a mask, right? Playing off your fear of the supernatural. It's always just like a mean dude wearing a monster mask or a ghost costume. So that's how this story's playing out. They're finding like the dead remnants of a sea captain and his tragic, weird, evil backstory. And I was like, well, where could that gravestone be? Where would be a great place to discover a hidden gravestone? And I found this map of a place called Lagoon Heights, which is a great name. I couldn't have come up with a better, creepy, weird name. And Lagoon Heights is a housing development. It's a neighborhood proposed for Martha's Vineyard in the 1800s that was never built. So it's a map of a thing that doesn't exist, which is one of my favorite types of maps. Maps for things that are not real. And using that as a reference, you could Google that phrase in Martha's Vineyard and you would find that same map. And it adds a creepiness because you can do the research yourself and find this strange place on your own. And I think that's cool. Also, the typography and lettering is very nice, and I kind of used it in my little map there as well. Okay, so that's the idea of setting. Setting playing a role in helping you understand more about your characters and even making your fictional stories feel very believable and often sometimes dangerous. All this history makes the climactic ending of the book more effective because you're like, wow, if this is a real place where characters live, they could also maybe die there, right? So even though these are cartoon characters, we can still feel there's emotional stakes for them. And I'm showing you this page from the book, which is basically a 2-page spread that opens like this when you get to it. And this was the first image I had in mind when I was working on Shark Summer. So a question an author always gets asked is like, where do you get your ideas, right? Like that's a pretty easy question to ask because you as young aspiring creatives, you want to know where inspiration comes from and where you should be looking for it and things you want to make. And when I had the idea for Shark Summer, I had this vision of a scene where 2 very good friends that had been separated had to climb out to the end of like a really dangerous, slippery, rocky crag amidst a thunderstorm out in the great freezing cold Atlantic Ocean, and then was swallowed up by a giant wave that was shaped like a shark. That was like a thing, like I'm like, if I can make a story that gets to that scene, I've got a pretty good book on my hands, I think. And so you can read Shark Summer and look at it that way. It's basically me trying to get to this really cool moment. And I say that because inspiration for story comes from a lot of places. This was mine. Sometimes it comes from a character you've been working on. Like who's a writer or artist who like makes up characters? You guys have like characters that live with you sometimes? A couple of you do. That journey takes many forms. For me in this project, it was like a moment with characters that came to life that I really wanted to get to. All right, so in terms of Jaws, as an influence, not just Martha's Vineyard, but the making of a very famous, iconic movie, there's a lot of little Easter eggs that are not essential to my storytelling, but they're little clues for a fan of Jaws that add another level of readability to the story. So like little things, like the main character in Jaws, his name's Chief Brody. He's the sheriff of the town of Amity. And he has to deal with the whole shark problem. And he's got this very specific pickup truck that's this bright yellow. In fact, yellow is a very common color in the movie Jaws. It's kind of this visual language of the story. And we see that truck every once in a while. Do you need to know that it has to do with Jaws? No, but if you read the book a couple times, you'd start to see this visual pattern and start to wonder what that means. And then eventually maybe that would lead you into some research of Jaws. And I think it's cool when a book leads you to other pieces of media and other types of stories that inspired it. And there's some other Easter eggs, like Martha's Vineyard is not in the story of Jaws, not what they call it Amity Island. And there's this big billboard that they use, and I have the characters in my book putting up the billboard and so forth. All right, so I want to talk a little bit more about the frame and the inspiration of Jaws here, but we'll take a quick moment for questions or thoughts or ideas, anything you've been waiting to ask. Oh, I've covered everything. Oh, there's half a hand, there's a full hand. Yeah, in the back first.
Who's the person sitting on the building with his hat?
Oh, well, in the book, that's a character named Charlie, who's a special effects artist. And I'll talk a little bit more about the special effects art that he represents in my story in a minute. You have a question?
Is that the truck behind the billboard on the left?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like all these little clues that would pop up if you kind of like had seen Jaws. Or if you see Jaws after you read the book, I think that's funny because you're like, wow, is this movie based on that book I read? There's a hand.
There's a truck there, but there's not one of
Yeah, exactly. See, that's the secret with the Easter egg, is it really starts to make you look for stuff. Like, you're starting to find that there's like little secret patterns in all the images, and I think that's a fun thing to like hide inside a book.
Not only that, but the red title 50th annual something. It's also written on the other one, but just faintly.
Yeah. So it's like kind of, visual interpretation kind of thing. Okay, so let's dig into this idea of the frame. The thing I pointed out first and foremost is the essential tool of the cartoonist. It's also the essential tool of the filmmaker. So there's the Jaws movie poster, which you might recognize, or at least you've probably seen parodies of it, and maybe you recognize even the lettering and so forth. On the right, anybody know who that guy is? No. Oh, you do? Steven Spielberg. So he's the director of Jaws. Shark Summer is kind of about a book of things that exist outside the frame, the people that make something happen, right? So like Elijah and Gail, they never lived on Martha's Vineyard and they weren't in the movie Jaws, but they kind of, for me, exist there outside the frame of the real world or these other pieces of pop culture that happen. Steven Spielberg, like any director, is the behind-the-scenes influence of an iconic movie. And you don't necessarily think about the people that make the stuff that you love, unless you really love it and you dig into it. So I wanted the book to kind of represent that. The way the characters in my story move around just outside the frame of what is the truth and the history of this actual place. So like there's Gail in the background coming out of a store, and there's the director of Jaws pointing his camera just the opposite direction, making a scene from the movie. And you can imagine that like Gail is somewhere in this world moving around behind the scenes. So the power of the frame, I think, is best represented in the big pneumatic robotic model of the shark from the film. So again, a movie from the 70s does not have the benefit of CGI technology to make a movie monster. You had to literally build it, and you had to literally go to Martha's Vineyard with that giant sea monster you built to film it. So they called it Bruce the Shark. The shark doesn't have a name in the movie, but behind the scenes, the creative team just named their big pneumatic robot shark Bruce. So there's Bruce being worked on. Bruce is a big iron welded structure with foam wrapped around it to be the skin of the shark with pneumatic tubes jammed in it so it can move its mouth and move its fins and its tail and do all different types of sharky-like movements. You can't just go buy a thing like that in the store. You got to invent it, and you got to hope it works. And guess what? It didn't really work. So if you watch Jaws, there's only like 2 or 3 minutes of actual footage of the shark. And it's to the movie's benefit. Because if you know anything about a good scary movie, it's kind of better when you don't see the scary thing, but just hint at it, right? So not seeing the shark makes the shark scarier. Because to actually see it in its full form is not that scary. Like, is that image scary on the left? No, because it's not for the movie. It's like a behind-the-scenes shot. And the whole space and the places where this thing was worked on is a big part of my storytelling. This is called Shark City, which is the big warehouse where they built the Jaws robot, where they worked on Bruce. And when we look at these behind-the-scenes photos of Steven Spielberg trying to capture the magic of a movie monster by pointing a camera at a big foam head, it's kind of funny when you think about it. And it's also revealing of the magic of the frame. To watch Jaws is to see a scary movie about a monster that's terrorizing a small community. But to look at the footage of the behind the scenes is just to see a bunch of people pointing the camera at a big weird sculpture. So that's the power of the frame. Here's a nice, I like this photo. It's just kind of Bruce getting his teeth brushed on a morning of a film shoot. I think that's just kind of fun and charming. So let's say you were curious about the story of Jaws. You could go on the internet or into a library or bookstore and find all kinds of books about the making of this film. Because culturally, it represents a bunch of people working together to make a very important piece of pop culture that at that time, they had no idea it was going to mean anything. This movie could have been totally forgotten and lost to time, but it wasn't. And part of that is because the shark didn't really work. Okay, so that's overall the story of Shark Summer. It's 2:18. What time are we going till?
This group 2:30, and then we'll go till 2:45 with the group behind.
All right, okay. So let's start getting into questions here a little bit. I've got more slides that are a bit more about the day-to-day life of making a graphic novel, but in terms of all the subjects I covered, all the themes this book is about, anybody have any thoughts or questions about what I've gone over? It could even be a statement, like you're like, wow, I never thought about this. It doesn't have to be a question for me. Yeah? You?
What made you think about doing this?
But what made me think about doing this? So you're kind of opening a door into why artists get to make stuff. Now, thanks to the internet and all kinds of other social places, artists can really make stuff and find a community whenever they want, which is cool. And I've done a lot of work like that. But I also always had the dream of having a book that was just in the public library, because I've always loved libraries. I lived in a very small town. The library were really my one outlet to the rest of the world. There wasn't a movie theater and I didn't really have good internet where I lived. So I've always kind of dreamed of having a book in a library. And to do that, you got to work with a traditional publisher. So what made me want to do this was aspiring to have a book that existed in the public library, basically. And I've had a lot of independent and smaller comic projects. I've made web comics and I've made little zines and all kinds of things. But eventually I met an agent and an editor that helped me get a publishing deal. And I pitched a bunch of projects. My editor didn't really want them. She was like, okay, these are all fine, but you have a story that's about young friendship set in a point of history that has meaning to you. And I was like, not really, but I do love movies. And I guess movies are part of history. So what's a movie that has a famous story where I can put some characters? And I settled on Jaws, and I came up with the title Shark Summer. And my editor's like, that's a great title, let's make that book. So it's really kind of just about the title sometimes. Question then?
So, did you bring,
Let the blackish gray t-shirt there first. Yeah.
so, did you draw the panels, or did somebody else do it?
Yeah, good question. I'm about to talk about all the journey of me making the book and the people I worked with on it. So the answer is yes, I did draw all the panels, and I'm going to show you some slides on that. Any other questions about some of the storytelling stuff here before we look at all that? Black sweatshirt there?
The writing too?
The writing, yeah. Yep. Okay, one more question. Right there in front, frontish.
Have you made other books with the same characters from this book before?
Yeah, at the end of the next couple slides, I'll tell you what the next book in the series is, which is actually set in Colorado, funny enough, and a new one that I have coming out soon. All right, let's cover a little more. I think it's insightful to get a little crash course on the day-to-day life of the comic artist. So once you get a book deal, which begins with a pitch. So Shark Summer was basically a 13-page sample of what the book might look like. And then the publisher says, okay, we like that idea. Here's some advance money to help you make it. And then you use that money to support yourself while you make the book. And then begins the long organization journey of how do I make a 300-page book, which is a big task. And it requires Google Docs. Who likes Google Docs? Some people do. This is a printout and then photograph of a Google spreadsheet that, as you can kind of figure out by looking at, is scenes from my story. So before I start to actually sit down and draw the book, I want to know what I have to draw, because who likes to draw? Any of y'all draw? Who knows that drawing is hard work? Who has ever made a character and drawn them once? You're like, cool, I love my character. Then you go to draw them again, and it gets really hard all of a sudden. Who's been there? That's cartooning. That's the job. The job is the drawing and drawing and drawing of things over and over and over again. So that said, knowing what you have to draw and how important it is very valuable. So on the left, I've got descriptions of setting and character intent, what they need to do in that scene, and how many pages that scene might take up. So more important scenes get more pages. Like, for example, the cemetery where they discovered the dead sea captain's grave, and we learn a little bit about Maddie's obsession. That levels up the story to a place you did not expect it to go. To get there, I need 9 pages, I think. And maybe I only need 2 pages when Maddie's back at home and we see this other clue about, a mark on her neck and so forth. This is me living the story through very simple notes to myself. And then once I edit this down and decide what I really need to draw, I have a pretty good idea of my page count. And page count's important because that means that's how much the book costs for the publisher to print and ship. The longer the book, the more it costs to print, the more it costs to send around to libraries. Those are all things that affect whether they want to make the book or not. So most middle grade graphic novels are about 300 pages, which you probably notice a consistency if you go into a library or bookstore. They all look like they're about the same size. So Shark Summer needed to be 300-ish pages. So let's zoom in on a scene, The Wharf at Night, where Gail and Elijah are trying to film a scene from their movie using Bruce the Shark, which they're totally not supposed to do. Very illegal to just break into a film set and use the props for your own film. This is a script. Who's been in a play or seen a play? The answer is everybody, right? What is a script doing for an actor? Yeah, telling them what to do, right? Like what to say, and also how to move around the space. So this is me telling my characters that don't even exist in real life what to say and how to move around it. And we could also print this out and you and I could act Shark Summer out as a play. I think it's easier to write words than it is to draw pictures. If I need to draw the wharf at night and this whole scene of the characters breaking into it and doing something illegal, it's easier for me to write that out as dialogue and get to know how the characters are going through this experience than it is for me to sketch it. And once I plan this out, I really know what my story's doing. And then I zoom in on an aspect of it and I start to take the dialogue and paste it out over panels. And that's what panels are really doing. They are pacing a story. Do you agree? Do you see how pacing is so important? If I slow down how I'm talking, the way you react to how I'm talking totally changes. Books work like that too. If you want a book to feel fast and urgent and interesting and like the pedal is pushed down and it's going really fast, you make characters talk faster. If you want to slow something down and build drama or atmosphere or calm it down, you put less text and fewer spots. That's what panels do for you. Once my dialogue is paced out, then I start to think about how the book flows overall. Books are a magical invention, like the way we turn pages and reveal new parts of the story throughout our interactions with the medium of the book itself. Comics really utilize that form of the book. The page turn is so valuable. And once I figure all that stuff out about the pacing of my story, what each scene needs to accomplish, then I do what's called thumbnail sketches. They're kind of hard to read, aren't they? Does that feel pretty messy? Like, it's hard to distinguish which character is which or what you're looking at, or all right, what is that even? It's like you just were electrocuted and your hand was touching the paper all of a sudden. These are pieces of information that are only for me and my editor. You know what a rough draft is, right? When you're working on an essay? Do you turn in a rough draft and get a grade on it? No, it's you spilling out your intent for a story or an essay or whatever onto the page. Then through some work with, an adult or a teacher or somebody up here, you revise and you edit and you create a final version. And then that's the thing you share with a reader. Books are the same way. Consider this my rough draft. You're not even supposed to see it because it's not very fun to read. It requires too much of your brain. But here is the final inks based on that. Easier to read, would you agree? Final inks in cartooning are often simpler than the sketch. Yet they have lots of very crucial pieces of information. All of Gail's eyebrows are really much in the right spot by this point. Everything is locked in. I've answered lots of questions as to how this story is playing out, how the characters feel about what they are doing, and what objects we need to look at and when we need to look at them. And then let's talk about this here. I think for comics, yes, they can be read in black and white. I love many black and white comics. But when you add color, something magical happens. Do you agree?
Looks better.
It looks better. All right, but what do you mean by better? Like, what do you get out of a color version that you don't get out of a black and white version that's important to you?
Because it's more.
Hold on, let's do one more time. Up front.
It looks more engaging, and it's more fun to like look at, like not in a way that it looks like better per se, just like it makes you think more, it makes you like more engaged with the story when there's black and colors or just like colors you see.
Yeah, there's more information to react to. Like, there's more emotional stakes. What else? Like, visual, what is it doing also in terms of storytelling? Yeah.
You can like imagine it when you're reading the story.
Yeah, it gives you like time of day.
Red truck going on the
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of
Agreed. Did you have something?
it makes it more realistic.
More realistic, because in our lives, we view the world through light, right? Light evokes color and all these things. So that's what happens when you add color. You add a sense of light and atmosphere. So we have a group that's kind of about to bail on us here in a couple minutes. So I just want to sort of resolve this little conversation about the making of the book. And what I'd like to say is, while this is the story of me, Ira, making a book I wrote called Shark Summer, I hope that your takeaway here is this is how creativity makes projects that become the iceberg above the surface. So whether you read Shark Summer or any other graphic novel, I'd like you to start thinking about, for your own sake, what it takes to make a story, and often how stories have elements of them that are about the creative process. This is very literally about the creative process, but a lot of books have things that feel like they're about storytelling in them. You see how I put a nice little button on that for this group? Nice to work with you all. See you guys later. All right, now that they're leaving, we're going to talk about all the really fun, interesting stuff. And we're also going to have a big party. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to just continue. All right, so I want to share a little bit more about a couple other books of mine, just in case you're kind of curious as to where I went from here after I finished Shark Summer. But does anybody have any other thoughts or comments on Shark Summer? I'll leave it at, which slide do I want? Oh, I'll show you this one. This is Elijah standing next to a book of chum, which is a bunch of smelly fish parts that you would throw out when you were fishing in the ocean.
So you put them in like a grinder and they grind up and they go like that.
Oh, yeah. Is that what you put your hand up about? Very nice. That is true. Okay, there's another hand in the front. Yeah.
How long did the book take you to finish?
Okay, the question is, how long did it take for the book to be finished? By finished, you mean like you can pick up a copy and read it?
Yeah.
All right, so like it took about 2 years to get from the pitch to making all the art to having the art edited and revised, then colored with the help of a color assistant, an artist named Emily, who helped me do all the coloring of the book. And then we create the cover and we start to put together what's called the package, which is like all the different parts of the book, like title page, little copyright information, the jacket that goes on the hardcover, where the barcode goes, a paragraph that tells you the plot summary, or a quote from another author. These are all little things that need to happen to become an actual book, not just the story. And then it needs to get printed and shipped to distributors and then put in a library. And all of that took about 2 full years to get from idea to actually a physical thing you could pick up and read. But about 16 months of that was actually me working really hard. Good question. What else? Black sweatshirt again. Yeah.
On the one that you like put more color on it, like it gives you more of an idea of what's going on.
Yes, it's like when a writer describes a setting, color kind of tells you aspects of the setting, right? If an author writes it was a dark and stormy night, color can really do that in a graphic novel. It can make you feel that dark and stormy night, right? Yeah, and time of day is very important, right? A haunted house during the day is very different than a haunted house at night. Also, seasons are important. The story of Shark Summer could only happen because it was summer. Shark Winter, that's not even a thing. It's like, that wouldn't have happened. So time of day, season, all those things come through storytelling choices and aspects of color as well. Yeah?
Will you ever make like a movie?
I don't really have the resources in my life or skills to make an actual movie, but you can tell I think about movies a lot. And I think maybe I like the idea of movies, but I don't want to really make one. I want to make comics, even if they're about movies, yeah.
How long did it take you to draw all the details?
Yeah, I think it was about 16 months, not like I worked every day, but like 5 or 6 days a week, drawing all the art from which includes the writing of the script and everything, and then sketching, and then the final inks, and then working with the colorist. Got a little bit more time. Let's do one more question there. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about some of my other books, just to let you know. I do, yeah, one more question now. Go ahead, blue t-shirt.
What if someone made a movie by your book?
What if they did? I think that would be cool. I think the one problem with this is that I'm talking about a movie called Jaws, which is an intellectual property that is owned by a movie studio, and they would have to sign off on that, which is very complicated. It's kind of like Star Wars. You can't just make your own Star Wars movie. You gotta get the rights to things. So having this be about Jaws probably holds it back from ever being a movie, which is fine. Okay, so just in case you were curious, this has become a series where we follow Elijah and he meets different groups of friends and he has encounters that are inspired by other popular films throughout history, mostly kind of like the late 70s, early 80s. So Shark Summer is the Jaws book, kind of a Scooby-Doo mystery set behind the scenes of Jaws. This one's set in Colorado. Anybody know what movie I'm talking about yet? It's about, I can give you some clues. Haunted house, actually haunted hotel that's not occupied other than by a single family and a dad who's trying to write a book and a kid who's riding a tricycle around a lot. 2 twins at the end of a hallway, elevator full of blood, hedge maze, someone's nodding. What movie I'm talking about? Anybody know?
I don't know.
All right, I'm just saying a bunch of random things then. Bloody elevator, that sounds cool, doesn't it? The Shining, has everybody heard of The Shining? Okay. See, some of you are like, ooh, I like whatever that movie is, though I'm probably too scared to watch it, or my parents are definitely not letting me watch it. This is about The Shining, mostly in that it's about the feeling of The Shining. If you even just look at screenshots of The Shining, they feel haunted. There's something about the way that movie was made that is very eerie. So this isn't like a haunted house movie, it's more of a movie, or a book. It's more of a book about the weird feeling of a place that is possessed by ghosts. You guys want to see the trailer I made for it?
Yeah.
All right, just because I make books about movies, I thought it'd be fun to make a little trailer. What was the question? Why a typewriter? So in The Shining, the father character is an author, and he has a typewriter he's working on. And also, The Shining is an adaptation of Stephen King is. You ever heard of that author's name, Stephen King? Whatever. He's a writer. So it's kind of a book about writing, but also about movies, but also about haunted buildings. All right, other questions? Are we getting too complicated yet? Okay. Yeah, blue shirt.
I went in this Daniel film.
Oh, good. Yeah, guys, tell me stories if you've been there. I've been to Colorado a couple times, but not in a long time. So I was not able to go there when I read the book. What was your experience like?
I was just going the first couple, first So I just went inside the lobby and seen it.
Did it feel creepy?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, in the back, I see a hand. Yes, you.
I have a question.
Good.
What is on Elijah's neck?
Oh, what is on Elijah's neck in this picture?
Yeah.
Oh, behind his neck?
Yeah, like.
Oh, he's got a big parka on, like, you know the fuzzy hood of a parka when you pull the hood up?
Oh.
But also it kind of looks like maybe a ferret or some very cute animal. I guess it formerly might have been an animal. I guess back in, 1980 when this story was taking place, the parka hood was probably an actual animal fur. Over there in the very back, yeah.
It looks like a caterpillar.
Say that louder.
It looks like a hairy caterpillar.
It does look like a hairy caterpillar. I wish I had a panel, I wish I could just zoom in on that and we could just talk about Elijah's big fuzzy hood for a while. Yes, let's imagine it's a giant caterpillar. Now we can't unsee that. All right, other questions about caterpillars?
It's not about caterpillars.
Okay.
Where can I find the book?
Oh, great question. Where can I find the book? I believe it's available at your local library. Is that true, librarians?
Yes, many, many copies.
Is it at
Oh.
Barnes?
What's that?
Is it at Barnes and Noble?
Yeah, but whatever. We don't want to support them.
You can read it for free at the library.
Yeah, go to the library and or go to your local community bookstore and support those businesses. I mean, Barnes and Noble is fine. If that's what you got to do, that's okay. But I think a big part of this is like I get to make these books because I do things like this and I do a lot of teaching. So we got to support the people that make the stuff and the people that celebrate the things that get made. And that's librarians and small business owners and all that stuff. That's what makes this all happen. So.
Did this one take longer than the book?
Oh, good question. Yeah. I think that's the case with a lot of authors. Like, who's read the Harry Potter books? Any of you? Or at least if you've looked at them on the shelves, the first one's about that big. The second one's about that big. The seventh one is like this big. So sometimes your brain just keeps growing and growing, and you have bigger ambitions. So this one took about 3 years to write. And it's not more pages, but it's denser, so it's more story. Though I do have a new one coming out, and this one just got finished, and it's the third in the series. So there's Elijah again. He's got a new hat, and his caterpillar is back at home. It's Habitat Trail or wherever he lives. And Elijah's meeting some new friends, and this is another movie reference. And this book is longer. It's like 350 pages, and this took me 5 years to finish. Does anybody know what movie I'm kind of getting at here, just based on the hat and the snake reference, Green shirt? Yeah, Indiana Jones. Who's seen an Indiana Jones thing at some point, or at least knows what that is? So, what'd you say, Jumanji? Oh, it kind of has a Jumanji-ish feeling too, definitely. And somebody was like, oh, it's kind of like Anaconda. And there is a snake, it is true. So this is my Indiana Jones movie-making adventure that's about a secret school of alchemy in Massachusetts. And alchemy is basically magical chemistry. But also it's not supernatural, it's realistic. Okay, other thoughts or questions? We got a couple more minutes. Yeah, go ahead. That's okay, it'll come back to you. All right, next to you. Do you know what you want to say?
Yes. How is this coming out in this November or did it come out last November?
This comes out this upcoming November, which probably feels like forever away. I know it does to me. But that's the thing about books is you can finish them and then they come out 2 years later and you have to pretend you just finished it. So I've been working on this book for a long time. I drew that cover about 30 different times before we arrived at the finished version. So I hope it works. I hope it's effective. How do you like the cover? Pretty good?
Yes.
Do you like my colors? You probably noticed that I'm really into purples. I use those a lot. Who's into purple? Couple people. All right, other questions? How many books have I made? In this series, there's the 3. I've got a lot of other projects. If you go to my website, I have shorter comics, independent comics that I self-published, through Kickstarter. If you know what Kickstarter is, it's kind of like an independent like community support platform. So it's like if you have a book or a video game or like a board game you want to make, you can get it funded through community support. And a lot of my career has been through community support. It's only fairly recently that I'm working with a publisher. But even then, community support is what makes these books get out there. So kind of 3, but also like 20 other books that no one's ever heard of. Sure.
So Elijah's the main character?
Yeah, well, my take on the book series was that there's so many series that are always the same group of people having wild adventures. And after you read a couple of those, you're like, how do these kids keep getting in these situations? So I was like, what's a little more realistic? It's kind of like a life, and it's like with our lives. You know, as you grow up, you kind of rotate through friend groups. Like you might have a couple people that are always around, but you're kind of always shifting through social groups. So Elijah is kind of meeting different people, but having similar types of adventures. And that felt a little different than what I had seen a lot of other authors doing. So Elijah is never the central character in the book, but he's always present as like a very important secondary character. So he's kind of like the main character of the series, but every individual book is a little more focused on another character. Like this book is about Rose with the hat, a bit more than it is about like Elijah.
So who's the main character in Shark Summer?
The character is Gale in Shark Summer, and then in Spirit Week it's Susie. But Elijah is like a close second. He's like their big moral support, basically. He's like the best friend, cheerleader, cinematographer, filmmaker, pal. Yes, right there.
Have you read any other books?
Am I going to write any other books? Yeah, I've pitched many other books that may or may not happen, but I'm definitely going to keep doing it, even if I have to do it independently. So yeah, I'm excited for this one to come out, and I've got a bunch of new ideas for things. We'll see if and when they happen.
Are you going to do more books that are connected to this series?
I don't know if that's going to happen. At this point, I think it might just be 3, but a trilogy is pretty nice. Like, you know, I like the idea of a trilogy. So this might be the last of them. But honestly, what happens with the series is every one you make, you have to work within the rules. Like you probably noticed that each book starts with the letter S. For some reason, my editor's like, we always got to use S. And we also have to have a length of time. So Shark Summer was a great title, but then she's like, Spirit Week needs to feel like Shark Summer. So I was like, well, Spirit Week. And then the next book, she's like, all right, your alchemy story, it's got snakes. We have to use snake, and we have to use night, because we use summer and we use week. So you get all these weird rules set up for yourself when you're making a book series. So honestly, I'm a little happy to not work in this formula for a while, because even like, what movie should I reference next? I don't know, give me a movie. What would you like to see? Yeah. Spider-Man, possible spider story. Yeah. Yeah. Motorcycles is just like a general idea. I would love to drive. Motorcycles are fun to draw. I could see that. Someone said Jurassic Park earlier. That would be a good one. Ooh. Yeah, I haven't done a creepy doll story yet. That's a nice one. All right, give me one more. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do love creepy dolls, don't we? No, some people don't. Okay, I think on that note, I think it's time to wrap up. I appreciate all your questions, and I hope this was fun and interesting. Oops, sorry. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.